Montana Territory, 1883. The wind howled low through the cottonwoods as August Deering pulled her shawl tighter and stepped off the stagecoach into the dry dust of Laurel Creek. The town had not changed much in 10 years. Same leaning saloon, same creaky post office, same slow-moving river curling behind it like a ribbon of silver. But everything inside her had changed. She had not meant to come back. Her boots struck the dirt with a hollow thud as she looked around, half expecting to see him. Not the man he was now, but the boy she knew then, the boy who once carved her name into the bark of a sycamore down by the river bend and said it meant something. He had promised they would meet there every year on her birthday, but once she left for St. Louis, that promise turned to silence. She told herself she had forgotten about their secret place. She told herself he had too, Miss Deering. Someone called. August turned. Sheriff Clary stood near the livery, hat in hand. "Your brother's things are in the back of the general store. We kept them safe after the fire." "Thank you," she said, her voice stiffening. "I will collect them shortly." She walked past him without another word. Her brother was dead. Killed in a barn blaze 2 weeks ago. That was why she had come. That and the letter she found tucked in a drawer, his last words, scrawled in a trembling hand. "Find Garrett. He'll know what to do. Garrett Nolan." The name landed like thunder in her chest. He was no longer the wild boy with dust in his hair and mischief in his eyes. People said he ran cattle now, up along the ridge. Lived alone. Strange how things circle back. She had left this place with her chin high and a suitcase full of dreams. Now she was back with her brother gone, her parents buried, and nothing left but a memory of a boy who used to hold her hand under the stars. August crossed the road toward the store, her boots crunching gravel. The door creaked open and she stepped inside. "August," the voice stopped her cold. She turned. Garrett stood at the back of the room, hat in hand, shoulders broader now, eyes the same amber gold she remembered. Time had deepened the lines of his face, made him look older than his 29 years, but there was no mistaking him. He took a few steps forward, slow like he was not sure she was real. "I did not think you'd come." "I almost didn't," she answered. His gaze dropped to her hands. "You got the letter," she nodded. "What did he mean? You'll know what to do?" Garrett looked away, jaw tightening. "He meant the boy." August's breath caught. "What boy?" Garrett hesitated, then motioned to the back room. "Come see," she followed. Inside, sitting on a pile of folded blankets near a wood stove, was a boy no older than 6, dirty blonde hair, big fearful eyes. He clutched a small wooden horse in his fingers. "Kip," Garrett said gently, kneeling. "This is August. She's your aunt." "My what?" August whispered. Garrett stood. "Your brother never told anyone. Kip's mother died 2 winters ago. He kept the boy hidden out at the homestead." August stared at the child. He looked like her brother. Same nose, same stubborn brow. "Why didn't he tell me?" Garrett's voice was quiet. "I think he was ashamed. He wanted to do right by the boy, but things got hard. He was behind on everything." "The fire, it was not an accident." August turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said it. "He was trying to cover up debts. The barn, the livestock, he lost it all before the fire even started." She sank into a chair, the room spinning. Her brother was gone, and in his place a boy who needed her. "I cannot take him," she said, too fast. Garrett just looked at her. "You are all he has." "I live in St. Louis. I have a job, a place. I am not," her voice broke. "I am not someone's mother. You do not have to be," Garrett said. "Just stay for a while. Let the boy know he is not alone." August looked at the child again. Kip had crawled under a blanket, his little face half hidden. "I do not know what I am doing," she whispered. "Neither did I," Garrett said softly, "but your brother trusted me." "And I trust you." She looked up. "Why did you not write me all those years?" He shifted his weight, eyes darkening. "I did. You never answered." August blinked. "I never got them." "I sent 3 letters. First year you left, I waited every day at that tree." Her heart cracked. "I thought you forgot," she said. "I never forgot," he said, voice low. "Especially not our place. Their secret place. The bend in the river, the sycamore tree, the carved initials." She stood, her hands shaking. "I cannot do this now." Garrett nodded. "All right." But when you can, there is something I want to show you. She looked at him, unsure. Just say when, he said. That night, August stayed in the room above the store. Kip slept fitfully beside her on the cot, clutching her hand in his small one. She watched him, heart tight, unsure what came next. But the next morning, when Garrett knocked on the door and said, "Come with me," she followed without asking. They rode out past the grazing lands, the sky stretching wide above them. Neither spoke. The wind carried the scent of grass and pine and old memories. Finally, Garrett slowed his horse and pointed through the trees. There it was. The sycamore still stood, bark weathered, initials barely visible but still there, AD. And GN, her breath caught. "I thought you forgot," she whispered. "I never could," he said. "I come here every year." "On your birthday." Tears slid down her cheeks. He dismounted, walked to the tree, and turned to face her. "You were my first love, you still are." She stepped closer, heart pounding. "I do not know what happens next," she said. "We figure it out," he said. "Together." He reached for her. She fell into his arms like it was the only place she had ever belonged. And behind them, Kip laughed as he chased a squirrel near the water's edge, sunlight catching his hair. It was not what August had planned for her life, but it was exactly what her heart had been waiting for. Kip crouched near the creek bed, chasing pebbles between his fingers while Garrett gathered driftwood for the fire ring. August sat on a fallen log, skirt hem brushing dry grass, her eyes following the boy's movements. The morning sun filtered through cottonwood branches, dappled and quiet. This wasn't how she imagined her return to Laurel Creek, sitting in silence beside a man she hadn't seen in a decade, watching over a nephew she hadn't known existed. "He doesn't speak much," she said without looking up. Garrett placed a thick branch onto the growing pile. "He did." "Before," she glanced at him. "Before what? Before the fire?" His voice held no anger, just a tired sort of knowing. "He was in the barn when it started. Your brother got him out, but the smoke, it scared the words right out of him." Kip tossed a stone into the shallow water. It landed with a soft plop. "I don't know how to help him," she said. "You don't need to know yet," Garrett replied. "Just don't leave him." She drew her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "I never meant to stay. My position in St. Louis, it's not something I can walk away from without cost." Garrett didn't press. He turned instead to the fire ring, arranging the wood with the precision of someone who had spent too many winters relying on it. When he spoke again, his voice carried that same careful steadiness. "You remember the hunt for the wild sorrel mare up past Cold Hollow?" August blinked at the sudden shift. "You were 13, I was still wearing braids. You chased her first, I followed the hoofprints, thought I'd lost you both." "She got away," August said. "I fell into a creek." Garrett smiled faintly, eyes on the fire. "You came back soaked, furious. Your pa made you sit on a rock till sundown." "I was trying to be brave," she said softly. "You were," he answered. She looked over at Kip again. The boy had moved closer, sitting cross-legged now, watching minnows dart through the shallows. His small shoulders hunched forward as if he was trying to disappear into himself. "I'd forgotten how still it is here," she said. "The quiet has weight." Garrett stood and dusted off his hands. "Comes with space. Out here the land doesn't rush." He crossed over, crouching near Kip with a slow ease. He didn't speak, just reached into his coat pocket and drew out a thin piece of rawhide. From it, he unwrapped a carved object no bigger than a thumb, a buffalo, smoothed and darkened with years of handling. Kip reached for it without hesitation, holding it to the light. "That was mine when I was your age," Garrett said. "Kept it in my pocket for luck." Kip turned the carving over, studied it, then tucked it carefully into his palm. August felt something shift low in her chest, like a string pulling taut. She rose and walked toward them, kneeling beside the boy. "You like animals?" she asked. Kip nodded once. "I used to have a mare named Nettie. She hated apples but loved dandelions." The boy looked up at her, curious. Garrett said nothing, just watched with quiet eyes. Later, they rode back to town. Kip sat in front of Garrett on the saddle, hands gripping the horn, the rawhide buffalo secured in his coat pocket. August rode beside them, her own horse slower, less sure-footed. Garrett reached out once, steadying her reins when the gelding balked at a shadow. "Still ride like you're trying to outrun the wind," he said. She gave a tired laugh. "I never liked being still." He looked at her, expression unreadable. "You'll have to learn, the boy needs roots." August didn't answer. The sun was low by the time they reached town. She dismounted stiffly, legs aching, and lifted Kip down. He clung to her skirt for a moment before stepping aside. "I'll take him up," Garrett offered. She nodded and watched them disappear into the general store, the boy's hand still tight in his. She stayed outside, letting the last of the warmth sink into her bones. A wagon creaked somewhere down the road. A dog barked once, then stopped behind her. The door eased open again. Garrett stepped out, closing it gently. "He's asleep," he said. Didn't even stir. August kept her arms crossed. "I should start sending word to St. Louis about my position. The longer I wait, you want to leave," Garrett said quietly. She turned to face him. "I didn't want to come, but you did." She didn't speak. He stepped closer. "You're not the same girl who chased horses through creeks. I see that, but you're still her, somewhere under all the city polish." "I worked hard for that polish." "I know," he paused. "But you don't have to lose it to be here. You can keep both." August shook her head slowly. "It's not that simple. Nothing worth keeping ever is," he said. The silence stretched between them again, but this time it wasn't empty. She looked up at the darkening sky. "I need time," Garrett nodded. "Then take it." "I'm not going anywhere." She watched him walk back inside, the door clicking shut behind him, and for the first time since she'd returned, August didn't feel like she was running. The sun cleared the ridge slowly the following morning, painting the frost-laced rooftops of Laurel Creek in pale gold. August stood by the window of the store's upstairs room, arms wrapped around herself, watching smoke rise from nearby chimneys. The boy stirred behind her in the cot, still caught in sleep. She let him be. Her fingers ached from the cold as she laced her boots. She moved quietly, careful not to wake him, and tied the last knot with a sharp pull. On the landing, she paused, listening. The store below was still locked, quiet. She stepped outside into the bite of morning. The walk to Garrett's place took her north along the edge of town, past the schoolhouse with its crooked bell tower and the church with the roof under repair. She followed the trail that curved behind the ridge, frost crunching underfoot, until the land opened into rolling pasture and the outline of a small cabin came into view. A thin column of smoke trailed from the chimney. Garrett stepped out before she reached the porch, brushing his sleeves clean of sawdust. He looked at her without surprise, as though he'd known she'd come. "I didn't want to stay inside," she said. "You left the boy alone?" "No," she said. "Mrs. Bell from the bakery is watching him. She offered when I picked up milk." Garrett nodded once, stepping aside to let her pass. The inside of the cabin smelled of split pine and something faintly sweet. A pot of dried beans simmered on the stove's backplate, the air warm but not stifling. "You built this yourself?" she asked. "Started it after the first winter I ran cattle," he said. "Took 3 years to finish it all." She stepped toward a row of shelves along the far wall, running a finger along the spines of a few worn books. "I didn't expect to find Emerson here. Helps to think about things in someone else's words sometimes." She turned. "You always read." "Only when I can't sleep." She leaned against the edge of the table. "Did you sleep the night of the fire?" He looked down, jaw working. "No. Did you know it was coming?" "I knew your brother was drowning," he said. "He wouldn't let anyone pull him out." She said nothing. He walked to the stove, stirred the beans, then leaned one hip against the counter, arms crossed. "I tried to buy his land last fall, offered fair. He wouldn't take it, said it was all he had left. And now, it's tied up in debt. The only thing untouched is the stretch by the river." She lifted her eyes. "Our place," he nodded, "that part's still his, for now, but the bank's watching everything else. If you want to keep that land for the boy, you'll need to act soon." She rubbed at the edge of her brow. "I don't know how to do any of this." "You learn," he said. "Same way I did. You start small, you wake early. You listen to the land. I'm not built for this. You were born here, August." She let that hang between them. Outside, the wind had picked up. A pane in the window rattled faintly. She crossed the room, tracing a fingertip along the grain of the doorframe. "What would you do if you were me?" "I'd ask for help," he said. "And I'd stay long enough to see what grows when you stop running." She closed her eyes briefly. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," he said, "but it's not impossible either." She turned, studying his face. He didn't look away. A silence passed, not heavy, just full. "I want to see the land," she said. "What's left of it?" He reached for his coat. "I'll saddle the horses." They rode out through the west pasture where snow still clung beneath the trees. The trail narrowed by the ridge, then opened again into low meadow. At the far end, the earth sloped gently toward the creek, curling through willow and alder. The sycamore stood tall, silver bark bright in the winter light. August dismounted slowly, boots sinking into soft ground. She walked the last stretch alone, stopping at the base of the tree. The initials were still there, faint but clear. Her fingertips brushed the carving. She didn't speak. Garrett stood a few paces behind. "I kept it cleared each year. Thought if you came back, maybe you'd come here first." "I almost did," she said. "You carved yours too deep," he said. "I had to catch up," she smiled, but it faded quickly. "I gave everything I had to St. Louis," she said. "It cost me years. I don't know if I have any left to give something else." Garrett stepped closer. "You do." She turned to him. "Why do you believe that?" "Because I see how you look at him," she blinked. "Kip," he nodded. "You carry him already, you just haven't said it out loud yet." She looked back at the creek. The wind stirred her hair. "I'm afraid." "So was I," he said. "The day I came here alone for the first time, but it's still here, still yours." She stepped toward him. "Not just mine." He didn't move. "Then we share it." The wind slowed. The silence held. She reached for his hand. He took it. And together they stood beneath the sycamore as the creek moved steady behind them, and the ridge watched in quiet approval. The snow fell slow that night, soft as sifted flour. August stood at the window in the storeroom, watching flakes gather along the sill. A lantern burned low on the table behind her, casting a muted glow across the wooden floor. Kip lay curled beneath the quilt on the cot, one hand tucked under his cheek, the other wrapped around that carved buffalo Garrett had given him. She hadn't written to St. Louis. The letter sat unfinished in her case, folded once, blank on the back. Downstairs, the door creaked open. She heard boots scrape the entry mat, then the low murmur of Mrs. Bell saying her goodnights. August moved away from the window, waiting. Garrett knocked once before stepping inside. His coat was dusted with snow, collar turned up against the wind. He carried a folded oilcloth parcel under one arm. "I didn't want to wake him," he said, glancing at the cot. "He's been sleeping better," August said. "He doesn't startle anymore." Garrett nodded, then held out the parcel. "Found this in your brother's tack shed. Thought you might want it." She took it carefully and unfolded the cloth. Inside was a faded leather-bound ledger, corners worn, the string clasp frayed. Her brother's handwriting filled the first page. She turned through it slow until she saw a sketch rough lines of a small house beside a creek, a garden plotted behind it. Underneath he'd written, "For Kip, someday." "I didn't know he had plans," she said quietly. "He didn't speak of them to many," Garrett said. "But he wanted the boy to have better." She traced her finger over the drawing. "You think it's still possible?" Garrett leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "If we clear the debts and claim the land before spring, yes, it'll take steady work." "I've never built anything," she said. "You've got hands, that's enough." She looked back at him. "Why are you helping me?" His gaze didn't waver. "Because I want to." She studied him in silence. The man he'd become carried a different kind of weight than the boy she remembered, not heavier, just steadier. As if the years had taught him where to set things down. "I thought I had to leave this place to matter," she said. "You did leave," he said gently. "And you learned how to stand on your own. That matters too." She closed the ledger and held it against her chest. "I don't know what comes next." Garrett stepped forward. "Then let's find out." She nodded once, slow. "I'll come back at first light," he said. "We'll ride to the claim office. I've got a friend there who might help us sort the papers." "Will the land be enough?" she asked. "It's not about enough," he said. "It's about what you can grow from it." He left then, soft-footed as always. She waited until the door closed before she returned the ledger to the table. Outside, the snow kept falling. By morning, the storm had passed. Pale blue sky stretched above the rooftops like a fresh washed sheet. Garrett arrived with 2 horses and a bag of biscuits wrapped in wax paper. Kip stayed with Mrs. Bell, bundled in wool and content with her cat curled in his lap. August rode beside Garrett along the frozen road, her hands stiff in her gloves. They didn't talk much. The silence between them had taken on a shape now, something comfortable, like the space between threads in cloth necessary, holding everything together. The claim office stood at the edge of the rail yard, a squat brick building with smoke curling from its chimney. Inside, it smelled of coal and paper. Garrett's friend, a man called Emery, wore spectacles and a vest too tight across his middle. He looked at the ledger, flipped through the pages, and scratched his chin. "The debts are real," he said. "But the river track's still clean. You'll need to file intent and claim guardianship of the boy." Garrett looked to August. She nodded. "I'll sign." Emery slid the forms across the desk. After the ink dried, they stepped back out into the cold. The sun had climbed higher, melting the snow from the rooftops. Garrett handed her the reins. "You filed for Kip," he said. "That means something?" "I didn't do it for meaning," she said. "I did it because he's mine." Garrett smiled, quiet and sure. They rode home slowly. At the store, Kip ran to meet them, cheeks wind-bitten, curls mussed. He held up a drawing he'd made of the buffalo and a small house beside a crooked tree. August crouched and took it, eyes stinging. "I like the tree," she said. Kip pointed to it, then to her, then back to Garrett. She looked up. Garrett stood beside them, watching. August rose. "The land's ours now," he nodded. "We'll start fencing in spring." She reached for his hand. "Stay for supper." He didn't hesitate. That night they ate by lantern light, all 3 of them. Kip spoke just one word, soft and sure: home. August looked at Garrett, tears in her eyes. He reached beneath the table and took her hand, not sudden, not loud, just steady. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was waiting for something to begin. It already had. The ground began to thaw by late March, soft beneath the heels of August's boots as she crossed the pasture behind Garrett's cabin. Thin shoots of wild rye pushed through the soil, and the wind carried the scent of damp earth and warming pine. She had traded her city skirts for practical calico and tied her hair back with a strip of muslin to keep it from her face. Her hands, no longer tender, bore the beginnings of calluses along the palms. Kip knelt nearby, stacking stones into a crooked wall beside the garden plot. He hummed under his breath, quiet and absorbed, his cheeks ruddy from the breeze. 2 weeks earlier, he had spoken her name aloud for the first time. Now he used it easily whenever he tugged her sleeve or called for her attention. She didn't press him for more. She let the words come on his own time. Garrett stood near the edge of the fence line, measuring posts with a length of twine. He glanced back now and then, not to check on her, but simply to see her there. "You think it'll hold through summer?" she asked, crouching beside him to steady a post. "If we brace it right and don't rush the corner joints," he said, tying a knot. "A storm might test it, but it'll stand." She nodded, brushing her hands clean on her apron. "I'd like to put in blackberries along the south side." Kip's taken a liking to them. He looked at her, something soft in his eyes. "Then we'll plant them." They returned to the cabin as the sun dipped low, the boy skipping ahead to beat them to the porch. Inside, supper waited, a pot of rabbit stew she had learned to prepare the way Garrett's mother once had, with thyme and marrow bones for depth. Kip set the table with care, folding the napkins into loose triangles while the oil lamp flickered above. After they ate, Garrett lifted the boy into his small bed tucked against the far wall. Kip leaned into his shoulder without hesitation, fingers still curled around the buffalo carving. August watched from the doorway, her heart full in a way she hadn't known before. Later, she stepped outside, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. Garrett joined her, the door clicking softly behind him. The stars had come out slow and clear, scattered across a sky scrubbed clean by recent rain. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice low. "He waited. I want to build it. The house my brother sketched, not just for Kip, for all of us." Garrett's eyes didn't leave hers. "I was hoping you'd say that. I can't do it alone." "You aren't alone." She turned to him fully, the night air cool against her skin. "Do you still want this, not just the land?" "Me here?" He stepped closer, his voice steady. "I want the mornings with you and the days fixing fences and the nights listening to that boy breathe steady in the next room. I want you, August." She reached for him, her hand against his chest. "I never thought I'd find my life in the place I left behind." "You didn't find it," he said. "You built it." He kissed her then, slow and sure, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything but offered everything, and when he pulled back, she stayed close, her forehead resting against his. They married beneath the sycamore tree at the river bend, the one where their names still lived in the bark. It was a small gathering. Mrs. Bell brought a cake, dusted with nutmeg, and Emery read the vows with his spectacles slipping down his nose. Kip stood between them, holding their hands in his, grinning a gap-toothed smile. By midsummer, the new house stood framed near the garden plot, its beams strong and square. August painted the front door a deep green. Garrett carved a heart into the lintel above the porch, not for show, but as a quiet promise. They planted blackberries along the southern fence, and Kip watered them each morning with a dented tin pail. The land didn't ask for rush. It asked for care, for patience, for hands willing to hold and be held in return. And that was what they gave it. At night, August sat on the porch with Garrett beside her, her head resting against his shoulder. The crickets sang low, and the air smelled of hay and honeysuckle. In those moments, there was nothing missing. Not from the land, not from her. Not from the boy who now called her mother without hesitation, and when Garrett laced his fingers through hers, she knew she had not come back to the past. She had come home.